The envelope lay on the table among the other letters, white with the blue logo of the Liberty State Bank. I didn't notice it immediately, as I was busy sorting my bills. Only after my second cup of coffee did I pick up the envelope and turn it over. Strange. I'd never done business with Liberty State Bank. I opened the letter, skimmed the first few lines, and felt a shiver run down my spine. Dear Mrs. Stone, we hereby remind you of your overdue monthly mortgage payment. What followed was an amount that made my head spin. $7,480. What the hell is this?
I mumbled, reading on.
The letter stated that I was delinquent on my second monthly payment for a mortgage loan of $950,000, which had been taken out in March. If I didn't pay the amount within 2 weeks, the bank would be forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings. My first thought was to call the bank and explain that it had to be a mistake. I had never taken out a loan for such an astronomical sum. My small house on Maple Avenue, which my late husband Otto and I bought 2 years ago, was long paid off. Why would I, a 67-year-old widow, take out a new loan? I dialed the number for Liberty State Bank provided in the letter. After a long wait on hold, I finally heard the voice of an employee.
Good morning, this is Lila Stone.
I received a letter about an overdue loan payment, but there must be a mistake. I haven't taken out a loan with your bank. One moment, Mrs. Stone, I'll check the information, the young woman replied politely. While she checked the data, I looked out the kitchen window at my small but well-kept garden. Otto had died 10 years ago, and since then I had lived alone in the house, gradually getting used to life as a widow.
43 years together, and 10 noting.
No, not entirely empty. I had children, Layla and Merton, but they had long since gone their own way and didn't often think of their mother.
Mrs. Stone.
The employee's voice brought me back to reality. According to our records, you did take out a mortgage loan of $950,000 for a period of 30 years on March 14th of this year. The loan was for the purchase of a property at 27 Lakeshore Drive in Lakeside.
But that's impossible,
I exclaimed. I never signed any loan documents, especially not for that much money. We have all the required documents, Mrs. Stone, including your signature on the loan agreement, copies of your ID, your social security number, and your tax returns for the past 3 years. I felt my mouth go dry. Someone had used my information to apply for a colossal loan. This is fraud, I said firmly.
Someone stole my data.
In that case, Mrs. Stone, you should go to the police, and you should come to our main branch with identification to get a hearing. But I must warn you that the bank will hold you responsible for the loan payments until the situation is resolved.
After the call, I sat down at my desk, my hands trembling.
Who could have done such a thing? Who had access to my documents? Suddenly the phone rang. My daughter's name appeared on the screen. Mom, did you remember that today is Nora's birthday? Layla began without greeting me. We're expecting you at 3 p.m. And please don't wear that awful green sweater. It's a restaurant, not a vegetable garden. Nora, my granddaughter, was turning 12. Of course, I had remembered and already prepared a gift. A silver bracelet with a star charm. I haven't forgotten, Layla, I said, but I have a serious problem. I received a letter from the bank. Mom, don't start that again, she interrupted, with poorly concealed irritation. If you get another credit card offer, just throw it away. How many times do I have to tell you not to open all those letters? Layla, it's not an advertisement. Someone took out almost $1 million in credit in my name. There was a pause on the phone. What kind of nonsense is that, Mom? Layla finally said with a nervous laugh. Who would give a retiree such a loan? You're mistaken. I'm not mistaken, I countered. I have a letter from the bank. It says in black and white about a loan taken out in my name, supposedly with my signature. Mom, your blood pressure must be rising again. Layla's voice had a sweet, caring quality that always meant extreme irritation. Are you sure you took your pills today? Stop talking to me like I'm an old woman who's lost her mind. I rarely raised my voice, but now I couldn't help it. I'm perfectly sane, and I know exactly what's going on here. Someone stole my information and took out a loan, and I'm going to report it to the police.
The police?
Oh my God, Mom, are you trying to embarrass us in front of the whole town? Layla sounded panicked. Listen, I'll come over after work. I'll look at this letter, and we'll figure it out. But for heaven's sake, don't call anyone. Okay, I agreed, a little confused by her reaction. Come over after work. After hanging up, I thought about it. My daughter's reaction seemed strange. Was she too scared by the threat of going to the police? Layla was usually the first to tell me not to make a fuss over nothing. To distract myself from my anxious thoughts, I decided to get ready for my granddaughter's party. I took a dark blue dress from my closet that I only wore on special occasions and began to iron it. My thoughts kept returning to the mysterious loan. At 3 p.m., I sat in the Golden Lily restaurant, a pretentious place with overpriced food and tiny portions. Merton, my son, was already there with his wife Mavis and their teenage children, 15-year-old Oren and 14-year-old Ina. Merton worked as a customs broker and always emphasized his status with expensive watches and suits. Mom, you haven't combed your hair properly again, he said, instead of greeting me, as I approached the table. Your hair is sticking out over your left ear. Hello, Merton, I ignored his remark.
Hello, Mavis.
Hello, everyone. The teenagers mumbled something in response, still on their phones. Mavis nodded with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. Where's Layla? I asked, sitting in the offered chair. Late from work, Merton replied. Some problems with the Wagner family. You know how conscientiously she performs her duties as an inspector. Layla worked in social services, dealing with troubled families. She always said her job was to rescue children from incompetent homes. Sometimes I thought that phrase was also an accusation against me. We sat at the table for half an hour when Layla finally arrived with her husband, Wilbur, and the birthday girl Nora. My granddaughter, a tall girl with brown hair for her age, wore an expensive dress that made her look like a miniature copy of her mother. Grandma, you came. Nora exclaimed with quiet surprise, as if my presence at her birthday party was unusual. Of course I came, dear. I would never have missed your birthday. I handed her a neatly wrapped box with a bracelet. Happy birthday. Nora took the gift without much enthusiasm and put it aside without even opening it. Thanks, she mumbled, then turned to her cousin Ina to show her something on her phone. Mom, what story did you come up with about the loan? Layla whispered to me while the others were busy studying the menu. I didn't come up with anything, I replied just as quietly. I have a letter from the bank. For heaven's sake, don't talk about it in front of everyone. Layla sat up straight and said loudly, Mom, would you like salad or soup? Lunch proceeded in a tense atmosphere. Merton and Layla discussed general business matters, occasionally turning to me with condescending questions. Do you still remember Uncle Basil? Or Mom, are you sure you're okay alone in that big house? My house was far from big. Only 3 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen. But the children kept hinting that I should move into a smaller apartment. I suspected they just wanted to sell the house and split the money. After lunch, as Nora opened her gifts, I noticed Layla and Merton exchanging meaningful glances when my granddaughter carelessly set aside a silver bracelet.
Must be old-fashioned, Layla mumbled, lud enug for ml to hair.
I wanted to say it was a replica of my grandmother's bracelet that she had worn her whole life, but I remained silent. What was the point of explaining the value of things to people who only cared about the price? When the party was over, Layla said she would come over in an hour. I took the bus home, feeling strangely anxious. Something about my daughter's behavior worried me.
At home, I read the bank letter again.
The address of the property bought with the loan seemed familiar. Lakeshore Drive was a new upscale neighborhood by the lake, often featured in the local newspaper. Had someone stolen my information to buy a house there? While waiting for Layla, I turned on the computer, a Christmas gift from Merton, so you can stay current, Mom. I wasn't very good with computers, but I knew the basics. I opened a search engine and entered the address, 27 Lakeshore Drive, Lakeside. Photos of a luxurious 2-story house with panoramic windows and a lake view appeared on the screen. The value of such a property could indeed have been around $1 million. I scrolled down the page and froze when I saw the information about a recent sale. The house had been sold in March of this year, and the transaction date matched the loan processing date. I heard the sound of a car approaching and looked out the window. Layla had parked her brand new SUV in front of the house. I noticed that the car was new too. Previously, she had owned a mid-range sedan. When my daughter entered the house, I immediately noticed her nervousness. She avoided eye contact and adjusted her hair too often, a gesture that always betrayed her agitation. "Where's that letter, Mom?" she asked, without taking off her coat. I silently handed her the envelope. Layla quickly skimmed the text, and I saw her turn pale. "This is some kind of mistake," she said uncertainly. "Or a scam. Someone used your data." "That's exactly what I told you on the phone this morning," I said, "and I wanted to report it to the police."
No, Layla Saídas Chile.
"I'll take care of it myself. I have a friend at Liberty State Bank who can help me sort this out." "I found out something too," I said calmly. "The address in the letter is a new house on Lakeshore Terrace. It's a very beautiful house, judging by the pictures on the internet. 2 stories with a lake view." Layla looked up sharply. "You looked on the internet?" "Yes," I nodded. "And I also noticed you have a new car. I don't remember you saying you wanted to change it." "Mom, what are you trying to say?" Layla's voice hardened.
Noting yet, ich schroget. Just an Observation.
Layla nervously clutched her purse. "Listen, I told you I'd take care of this stupid letter. You don't need to worry about it." "I think I do," I retorted. "Someone took out a loan in my name, used my documents, forged my signature, and if I don't pay this loan, I'll lose my house."
Nobody's taking your house away.
Layla exclaimed with sudden anger. "Damn it, Mom, why do you always have to make everything so complicated?"
I told you I'd fix it.
She was almost yelling, and I could see the red blotches on her neck, a sure sign of extreme agitation. There was only one thing that could provoke such a reaction. Layla knew much more about the loan than she was letting on. "It was you," I said softly, looking her directly in the eyes. "You took out the loan in my name." My daughter looked away. "Don't be silly, Mom. Why would I do that?" "I don't know," I replied, "but I'll find out."
Layla snatched the papers from my hand.
"I'll take this. And please don't do anything stupid.
Don't call the bank.
Don't go to the police. I'll handle it."
She ran out of the house, slamming the door shut.
I stood in the middle of the living room, feeling strangely devastated. My own daughter had stolen my information to buy $1 million house. A house she hadn't even told me about. I slowly walked to my computer and reopened the page with the pictures of the house on Lakeshore Terrace. A luxurious building with huge windows and a lakeview terrace. A place where I had never been invited. In my inbox, I noticed an unread message from the bank. When I opened it, I saw an electronic copy of the loan agreement that had been sent to my address when the deal closed. In the borrower's signature column was a forgery of my signature, so crudely done that it was strange how the bank couldn't have noticed it. I leaned back in my chair, feeling a cold anger build inside me. For years, my children had treated me like a burden, tolerating my presence at family gatherings with barely concealed irritation, talking to me as if I were senile, and now Layla had crossed the line. She had not only stolen my data, she had put everything I had left at risk: my home, my independence, my dignity. I pulled my notebook from the desk drawer and flipped through it, searching for the right number. I needed a lawyer, but not the kind Merton would recommend. I needed someone who would stand with me against my own children. The law office of attorney Eleanor Vance was located in an old brick building in the business district of Lakeside. I found her contact information in the city directory, where she modestly advertised herself as a specialist in elder law and financial abuse. Exactly what I needed. I called first thing in the morning, and to my surprise, the secretary scheduled an appointment for the same day at 2:30 p.m. Apparently, the lawyer's calendar wasn't too full. When I got off the bus, I stood for a while in front of the entrance, gathering my courage. The word lawyer had always sounded intimidating to me. I had only had to consult a lawyer twice in my life, when Otto and I bought a house and when we drew up his will. In both cases, they were Otto's acquaintances, and he handled all the negotiations himself. I can do this, I told myself, pushing open the heavy door. The reception area was small but cozy. Behind the desk sat a young woman with a short haircut and thick glasses. "Mrs. Stone?" she asked when she saw me. "Dr. Vance is expecting you. Please come in." The lawyer's office looked unexpected. Instead of a stiff, formal interior, I saw a bright room with large windows and potted plants. Behind a wide desk sat a woman in her 60s with short gray hair and a bright blue suit. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Stone." She stood up and extended her hand. "Eleanor Vance, please have a seat." Her handshake was firm, like someone accustomed to projecting confidence. I sat in the chair she offered. "Tell me what brings you here," Eleanor said, pulling out a notebook. I took a deep breath and started with the bank letter. I told her about the call to the bank, Layla's reaction, how I had found pictures of the house online, and the last conversation I had with my daughter. My voice trembled, but I tried to be concise, without getting emotional. Eleanor listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen thoughtfully on the table. "What you've described, Mrs. Stone, is a classic case of identity theft, complicated by the fact that the perpetrator is a family member. Unfortunately, this is not uncommon, especially among older individuals." "Do you think my daughter really did it?" I asked, still hoping for another explanation.
What do you think?
Eleanor looked at me pointedly. I sighed. "I think so." The new car, the nervousness when talking about the loan, the attempt to silence me. But I can hardly believe that Layla could do such a thing. She was always ambitious and a little arrogant. But commit a crime. "People change," Eleanor said, "and not always for the better. Tell me, has your daughter shown any signs of, shall we say, disrespect for your personal and financial independence?" I pondered. There were many instances over the years where my children tried to control my decisions, especially those involving money. After Otto, my husband, died, Merton insisted I give him power of attorney to manage my accounts. He claimed it would be safer, but I refused. That caused quite a scandal. He even threatened to have me declared incompetent if I continued to be stubborn. "And the property?" Eleanor asked. "There was constant talk about selling your house." I nodded, especially in the last 2 years. "Layla says it's too big for me alone, that I can't maintain it. And Merton calculates how much I could get for selling it. They even found me a nice little apartment in a retirement home." Eleanor made a note in her notebook. "Do you have a will? Who inherits from you?" "Layla and Merton equally," I said. "Otto and I decided that years ago, although I admit I've been thinking lately about changing it, leaving the money to the grandchildren instead of the children." "I understand." Eleanor nodded. "Now, back to our case. We have a few options. The first is to go to the police and report fraud. That's the most drastic step, and it could lead to criminal prosecution for your daughter." I flinched at these words. Layla is a criminal, my daughter in jail. It seemed absurd. "Are there other options?" I asked softly. "The second option is a civil lawsuit," Eleanor continued. "We could sue your daughter and have the loan agreement declared fraudulent and void. That's less drastic than a criminal case, but it would still lead to a public scandal." "And the third option?" I nervously clutched my purse. "Try to settle the matter amicably," Eleanor shrugged. "I could write a letter on your behalf, outlining the facts and demanding that your daughter take over the loan or pay it back immediately. The threat of criminal prosecution might force her to act." I remained silent, trying to digest the information. All options seemed terrible, but even more terrifying was the thought that my own daughter had put me in this position. What would happen if I just did nothing? I finally asked. "If I simply ignored this loan?" Eleanor shook her head. "Then the bank will initiate foreclosure proceedings. First, they'll charge late fees, then they'll turn it over to collection agencies. Eventually, they could sue you and get the right to foreclose, including seizing your property, meaning your house. But that's not fair. I cried. I didn't sign anything. Justice and the law are not always the same thing, Mrs. Stone, Eleanor said softly. To prove you didn't take out the loan, we would have to prove fraud, and that means naming the fraudster. I closed my eyes and felt a lump in my throat. As long as I could remember, Layla had always been a difficult child. Stubborn, sharp-witted, ambitious, not childishly calculating. She rarely made friends at school but always got the best grades. She often clashed with her brother, but she could manipulate him. Otto thought she would make a great lawyer or politician. Our girl has an iron will, he'd proudly say. But there was something else about Layla. Beneath the mask of self-confidence lurked a painful need for recognition, for validation of her worth. I noticed it in the smallest things, how she showed off new possessions, how desperately she wanted to impress others, how painfully she reacted to any criticism. I remember when she was 15, she came home crying because she hadn't gotten the lead role in the school play. That role was mine, she screamed, locking herself in her room. And the next day, we learned that the girl who got the role had an accident. Someone had pushed her down the stairs, and she had broken her arm. Layla got the role. Otto and I never discussed the incident, but I could see the worry in his eyes. As she grew up, Layla didn't change. She married Wilbur not out of love, but because he came from a well-connected, respectable family. She chose to work in social services not out of compassion for troubled families, but because it gave her power over others. And I knew she was always envious of those who lived in upscale neighborhoods, drove expensive cars, vacationed in exotic countries. Mrs. Stone, Eleanor's voice brought me back to reality. Do you need some time to think? Yes, I suppose I do, I nodded. This is too big a decision to make right away.
I Unterstand. Eleanor handed MLA business card.
Call me when you've decided how you want to proceed. But don't take too long. Time is working against us. I stood up to leave but stopped at the door. Dr. Vance, what would you do if you were me?
Eleanor hesitated.
I can't give such advice, Mrs. Stone. Everyone must decide for themselves what is more important, family ties or justice. And if there's no choice? I asked softly. If family ties are already broken? Then there is only justice, Eleanor replied simply. And self-respect. I left the office with a heavy heart. Outside it was drizzling, and I opened the umbrella I always carried.
An old habit my children used to mock.
Grandma, the weather lady, Nora called me. Mom, there are weather apps now, Layla would say. Walking slowly to the bus stop, I thought about Eleanor's words.
Family ties versus justice.
But aren't true family ties based on mutual respect? Can there be a real family where some members deceive and exploit others? The bus was late, and I sat on a bench. People rushed past, seeking shelter from the rain, indifferent to other people's problems. And my thoughts circled back to memories. There was Layla, a little girl with pigtails, running up to me with a drawing. Mom, look, it's you. The drawing showed an angular figure of a woman with a huge smile. Here she is, a teenager, rolling her eyes as I try to hug her before school. Mom, you're embarrassing me. Here she is, a college graduate proudly showing her diploma. And I see in her eyes, look, I did it all myself. Though that wasn't true, Otto and I worked double shifts to pay for her education. And then everything changed. After Nora's birth, Layla became even more distant. Her rare visits became a formality. Her conversations became a litany of my shortcomings. Mom, you should take care of your appearance. Mom, your house looks old-fashioned. Mom, you talk too much about the past. When Otto died, Layla organized the funeral without asking my opinion about anything. She picked out a coffin, flowers, even a dress for me. You're not in a state to make decisions right now, Mom, she said in a tone that brooked no argument. And after the funeral, she and Merton began dividing Otto's belongings as if I didn't exist. His stamp collection, which he had collected his whole life. Merton took it without even asking me. It'll just collect dust at your place, Mom. I became a burden to them. A problem to be solved. An old woman from whom only trouble could be expected. They stopped seeing me as a person. Probably never did. The bus pulled up, and I climbed the steps, struggling to hold onto my wet umbrella. A young woman offered me a seat, and I nodded gratefully. A small gesture of courtesy from a stranger, more than I had received from my own children in recent years. At home, the first thing I did was pull out my phone and dial the number of the only person I could trust.
Carol Peterson, a friend from my days at the post office.
Carol was 5 years older than me, but she had more energy than people half her age. When she became a widow around the same time as me, she didn't get depressed. She volunteered at an animal shelter and even started learning Spanish to further her education. "Lila," she answered after the third ring, "is something wrong? You don't usually call in the middle of the day." I briefly told her about the loan situation and the visit to the lawyer. "What a snake!" Carol exclaimed when I finished. "After everything you and Otto did for her, Lila, you should sue her."
No, the police.
"Let her feel the full force of the law." "I don't know, Carol," I sighed.
"She's my Daughter."
"How can I send her to jail? How can she steal from her own mother?" Carol retorted.
"Lila, listen to me. I know you love your children."
All mothers love their children, even the most ungrateful ones. But sometimes love means letting them face the consequences of their actions. If Layla gets away with this fraud, what will she do next time? Her words made sense, but I still struggled to accept the idea of reporting my own daughter. "I'll think about it," I said.
I need some time.
"Just not too much," Carol warned. "Those bankers won't wait forever."
And remember, I'm on your side, no matter what you decide.
After talking to Carol, I felt a little better. At least there was one person in the world who supported me unconditionally. I made tea and sat by the window, watching the rain turn into a torrential downpour. The drops drummed on the glass, creating a soothing rhythm. My thoughts slowly cleared. What would Otto say if he were in this situation? My husband was a kind man, but with firm principles. "Justice must be done," he often said. And also, you can't let people walk all over you, even if those people are your own family. Perhaps I had allowed my children to disrespect me for too long. Perhaps it was my gentleness and accommodating nature that prompted Layla to take this step. She knew I would rather keep silent than make a scene, but not this time. Enough of being a doormat. Enough of being invisible, whose opinion could be ignored. Enough of being the old, out-of-touch mother, tolerated out of politeness. I picked up the phone and dialed Eleanor Vance's number. "Mrs. Stone," she answered, surprised. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "I've made my decision," I said firmly. "I want to file a lawsuit against my daughter and report fraud to the police." "Are you sure?" I heard the doubt in Eleanor's voice. "That's a big step." "I am absolutely sure," I retorted.
If we back down now, I will never respect myself again, and my children will never respect me.
"All right," Eleanor said after a pause.
Come back tomorrow morning at 10 Uhr morgens.
We'll prepare the necessary documents. As I hung up, I felt strangely relieved. For the first time in years, I had made a decision that concerned me, not what the children would say. It was frightening and liberating at the same time.
The phone rang again.
Merton's name appeared on the screen. "Mom, have you lost your mind?" He began without greeting me. "Layla just called me, hysterical. She said you're threatening to sue her over a letter from the bank." "It was nothing, Merton," I said calmly. "Your sister took out a loan in my name without my knowledge. That's called fraud." "Oh, come on, Mom." My son snorted. "What drama? So she took out a loan. She's paying it off.
What do you care?"
"The difference is it's illegal," I said. "And if she stops paying, I'm the one who gets into trouble." "She won't stop paying." Merton raised his voice. "Damn it, Mom, were you always such a pain in the neck?"
Always making everything so complicated. Did you know?
I asked directly. "Did you know Layla was using my papers?" Merton hesitated for a second. "I didn't go into details. She said you had an agreement." "We had no agreement," I interrupted him. "She stole my data." And if you knew about it and didn't stop her, then you're an accomplice.
An accomplice.
Merton laughed, but nervously. Mom, you've watched too many crime shows.
Nobody considers this a crime.
It's just a family matter. No, Merton, it's a crime, I said firmly, and I intend to get justice. For heaven's sake, Mom, my son's voice was impatient.
Wat Justice?
You want to put your own daughter in jail, embarrass the whole family.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that my children consider me so insignificant that they don't even see a problem in using my name for their schemes, I retorted. I'm thinking that you both have treated me like a burden for years. I think it's time that stopped.
Mom, listen.
Merton's voice became sweetly persuasive. Let me come over, and we can talk about it. This is just a misunderstanding. Layla didn't mean any harm. She just wanted a better life for her family. At my expense, I finished for him.
Don't be so dramatic, Merton.
Nobody's going to leave you with debt. Layla's paying her loan, and she'll continue to pay it. What if she loses her job, gets sick, decides she doesn't want to pay anymore? What then? That won't happen, Merton said confidently. Mom, you have to trust your children. No, Merton, I replied softly. You should have respected your mother, but you didn't, and now it's time to pay for it.
I hung up without waiting for a reply.
My hands trembled, but I felt surprisingly calm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a helpless old woman, but like a person who could stand up for herself. Of course, Merton and Layla would pressure me, use every means to make me back down. They would threaten, flatter, manipulate. They might even try to portray me as a senile old woman who had lost her mind, out of control. But now I had Eleanor Vance, a lawyer who believed me and was willing to fight for my rights. I had Carol, a friend who supported me unconditionally, and I had my resolve not to let anyone, not even my own children, trample on my dignity. The rain outside the window intensified, but I felt that my life was finally becoming clearer. I picked up the phone and dialed Eleanor's number again. Dr. Vance, I was wondering, if we win the case, what happens to the house Layla bought with the loan money? The bank will probably seize it to pay off the loan, Eleanor retorted. And if your daughter is found guilty of fraud, she could face a fine and possibly probation. I see, I said. Thank you, I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up thinking. Layla would lose her dream house, probably get a criminal record, probably resent me for the rest of her life. Merton would probably side with his sister. I could lose not only my children but also my grandchildren. A high price for justice, but the price for silence was even higher. The loss of self-respect. The feeling of having betrayed myself by letting my children deceive me with impunity. No, I couldn't back down. This was my last chance to show my children that I was not a useless person, not a senile old woman, but a person with rights and dignity. And if that meant conflicting with my own family, then so be it. I stared at the rain outside the window, thinking that tomorrow a new chapter of my life would begin. A chapter in which I would be the protagonist, not a minor character in my children's lives. The next morning was cloudy, but the rain had stopped. I woke up early before 7 a.m., and lay in bed for a long time staring at the ceiling. My thoughts revolved around my upcoming meeting with Eleanor and what lay ahead for me. Doubts began to gnaw at my soul again. Was I doing the right thing? Was it too drastic a step to sue my own daughter? The phone on the nightstand rang. I looked at the screen. Layla. My finger hovered over the answering machine, but I decided not to pick up. Whatever she would say now, it wouldn't change my mind. It would only drain the energy I no longer had. By 9 a.m., I was already outside Eleanor's office. The receptionist nodded understandingly when she saw me and let me into the office unannounced. Eleanor was sitting at her desk, looking at some papers.
Good morning, Mrs. Stone.
She gestured to a chair. I see you're early. That's good. We'll have more time. I sat down, nervously clutching my purse. Dr. Vance, I was wondering, do we really have to report this to the police? Wouldn't a civil lawsuit be enough? Eleanor looked at me intently. Are you having doubts? Yes, I admitted honestly. I thought about it all night. I think a criminal case is too final. There's no turning back after that. Do you want there to be a way back? Eleanor asked gently, after what your daughter did? I sighed. I don't know, what she did was terrible, but she's still my child. Look. Eleanor set the papers aside and leaned across the table toward me. Let's do this. We'll gather all the evidence first, and then we'll decide which path to take. We could start with a civil lawsuit and leave the question of criminal prosecution open. How does that sound? Yes, that would be better, I agreed, relieved. Then let's get started.
Eleanor pulled out a blank notebook.
We need to create a chronology of events and collect documents that confirm the fraud.
Let's start at the beginning.
When did you first learn about the loan? The next 2 hours were spent reconstructing what had happened. I told her about everything, the bank letter, the conversation with the employee, Layla and Merton's strange reactions, my daughter's new car, and the house on Lakeshore Terrace. So, Eleanor summarized, the loan was processed on March 14th. Were you anywhere on that day? Perhaps traveling or at a doctor's appointment. We need to prove that you couldn't have physically signed the documents at the bank. I thought, trying to remember that day, March 14th. Yes, I remember. I had a routine checkup at St. Jude's Hospital that day. It took almost the entire day, from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. First tests, then a cardiologist consultation, then some other procedures. It was a Tuesday. I remember exactly because I was worried about the results. Great. Eleanor made a note. We will request the medical records from the clinic to confirm your presence there at the time the loan agreement was allegedly signed. That's crucial evidence. Will they give us that information? Upon request from an attorney in preparation for a lawsuit, yes.
Anüting Else.
Oh yes, we'll need samples of your authentic signature to compare with the one on the loan agreement. Do you have any signed documents with you? I pulled my ID card and driver's license from my purse. Just these, the rest are at home. That's enough for now. Eleanor nodded.
I'll make copies later.
We'll need official handwriting analysis, but that's for the trial. She left the office with my documents, and I remained seated, looking at the many plants on the windowsill. Most were succulents, small, unassuming, but surprisingly resilient. In a way, they reminded me of myself. Eleanor returned with my papers and a glass of water for me.
Hier, drink this.
We have a lot of work ahead of us. I gratefully took the water. What's next? Next, we need to get a copy of the loan agreement from the bank. I've already prepared the request. Eleanor showed me a document on official letterhead. You need to sign it. We also need information about all loan payments, who made them and when. That will help prove that you had nothing to do with the loan. I signed the request, feeling strangely relieved that I wasn't the only one who had to deal with this complicated mess. Now, about the house on Lakeshore Terrace, Eleanor continued. You said you found information about it online, but we need the official property records. Who is it registered to? Who is the buyer on the purchase agreement? I'll file a request, but that will take some time. How long? I asked. 5 to 10 days. Bureaucracy. Eleanor shrugged. But there's a way to speed things up. I know a realtor who has access to the property database. He can give us preliminary information informally. I'll contact him today. What about the bank? I asked. How could they approve such a large loan without thoroughly checking everything? That's a good question, Eleanor nodded. Banks are required to conduct strict verification of the borrower's identity. But if the fraudster had all your documents, including your social security number and your tax returns, plus a well-forged signature, plus if the application was submitted by someone they knew well, who could answer personal questions about you. Banks also make mistakes, or turn a blind eye if it's a good deal, I said. And that's possible, Eleanor agreed. In any case, we'll certainly find out if there were any irregularities with the loan. The next few days passed in anxious anticipation. Eleanor was busy gathering evidence, and I tried to live a normal life. Although it wasn't easy, the children didn't call, neither Layla nor Merton. Apparently, they had decided to give me time to come to my senses. On the fourth day, Eleanor called and asked me to come to her office. "I have news," she said when I entered her office. "A realtor I know has provided information about the house on Lakeshore Terrace. Guess who it's registered to?" "Layla." "Not quite." Eleanor handed me a printout. "It's registered to Coldwell Holdings, LLC. That's a limited liability company that your son-in-law, Wilbur Coldwell, founded 2 months ago, shortly before buying the house." I frowned. Why all the fuss? Why not register the house directly in his own name? "To conceal the true owner," Eleanor explained. "That's a common practice when people want to hide something. In this case, I think your daughter and her husband wanted to hide the connection between the loan in your name and the purchase of the house. If the house had been directly transferred to Layla, it would have been too obvious where the money went." "But they live in the house, don't they? How do you explain that?" "Officially, they rent the house from Coldwell Holdings. At least, that's what my source said. The rent is $2,500 a month, which is far below market price for such a house." I shook my head, astonished at my daughter's cunning. I hadn't realized she was capable of such schemes. "That's not all," Eleanor continued. "I received a copy of the loan agreement from the bank. Take a look at the signature." She held it out to me. In the borrower's signature column was a scribble that vaguely resembled my signature. "That doesn't even look close," I exclaimed. "How could the bank accept such an obvious forgery?" "Because someone at the bank helped your daughter." Eleanor tapped the document with her finger. "Notice the name of the loan officer who processed the transaction, Kevin Reynolds. Does that name ring a bell?" I hesitated. "No, I don't recall." "What about your daughter?" "I don't know. Wait a minute." I remembered the conversation at Nora's birthday party. Merton had mentioned someone named Kevin who Layla had studied with. I think they were together for a while, but I'm not sure if it's the same Kevin. "It's worth checking out." Eleanor made a note. If the loan officer knew your daughter personally, that would explain how she managed to bypass the standard checks. Eleanor pulled out another document. "Here's the loan statement. 2 payments have already been made. Guess by whom?" "Layla." "No, Coldwell Holdings. The money comes from a corporate account." Another attempt to hide the connection. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process what I'd heard. My daughter had not only used my documents, she had set up an entire scheme to cover her tracks. "What about Merton?" I asked. "Did you find out what role he played in all this?" "There's no direct evidence of his involvement," Eleanor replied. "But based on his reaction, as you described it, he was definitely aware of his sister's dealings. The question is whether he actively helped or simply turned a blind eye." Just then, Eleanor's cell phone rang. She excused herself and answered. The conversation was short, but afterward, the lawyer's face lit up. "Great news. St. Jude's Hospital has confirmed that you were indeed there on March 14th from 8:30 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. They kept all records, including the time of each procedure and consultation. And according to the bank's stamp, the loan agreement was signed on the same day at 11:20 a.m. "So I physically couldn't have been at the bank at that time," I said. "Exactly." Eleanor nodded. "It's an airtight alibi. Now we have all the evidence we need for the lawsuit, the forged signature, your alibi for the time of signing the contract, the questionable role of the loan officer, and the obvious scheme to conceal the true purpose of the loan." I remained silent, processing the information. On the one hand, I was relieved that irrefutable evidence had been gathered. On the other hand, I was depressed by the thought of how carefully Layla had planned the whole thing. This was not an impulsive act or a moment of weakness. This was a well-thought-out fraud against her own mother. "Are you all right?" Eleanor asked, noticing my state. "Not really," I answered honestly. "I just can't believe that my daughter, that she could do this to me." "Unfortunately, that's not uncommon," Eleanor said. "Especially when it comes to elderly parents. Many children start to see them not as full-fledged people, but as property or an annoyance or a source of potential inheritance. It's sad, but it's a reality. I nodded.
Tears wellet up in my throat.
You know, when Otto, my husband, died, I thought nothing worse would ever happen in my life. But this hurts even more. Eleanor silently handed me a box of tissues. I dabbed my eyes and tried to compose myself. I'm sorry, I'm not usually so emotional. Don't apologize, Eleanor said gently. You have every right to feel what you want in such a situation. We were silent for a while. Then Eleanor asked, what do you want to do next? We have enough evidence for a civil lawsuit. If we win, the bank will annul the loan agreement, and you won't have to pay the loan. But the house will likely be seized because it was bought with illegally obtained funds. And the criminal case? I asked softly. For that, you would have to file a police report, Eleanor replied. They will conduct their investigation, and if they find enough evidence, the case will be forwarded to the prosecutor's office. If your daughter is found guilty, she could face a fine and possibly probation. An actual prison sentence is rare in these cases, especially if it's a first offense. I considered. Did I want my daughter to have a criminal record? No. But did I want her to realize the seriousness of what she had done? Definitely yes. Could we start with the civil lawsuit? I asked. Could we leave the criminal case open? I want to see how Layla reacts. Maybe she'll come to her senses, admit her guilt. Of course, Eleanor agreed. We can take it one step at a time. First, we file a civil lawsuit, and then, depending on how things develop, we decide whether to involve the police. Thank you. I was relieved. When can we file the lawsuit? I'll have the documents ready by the end of the week, Eleanor said. We'll file the lawsuit at the Lakeside County Courthouse. After that, your daughter will receive official notification of the suit. It usually takes about a month to prepare for the first hearing. A whole month. I was surprised. That long. Those are the court rules, Eleanor shrugged. But the good news is, I'll file a motion for interim measures. If the judge agrees, the bank will suspend all claims from the loan until the end of the trial. So you won't have to worry about payments during that period. When I left Eleanor's office, the sun was shining outside, a stark contrast to my inner state. I felt devastated, as if I had gone through a severe illness. On the way home, I stopped at the small cafe where I sometimes met Carol. I wanted to be among people, listen to ordinary conversations, to distract myself from my heavy thoughts. I ordered tea and watched the customers. At the next table, a young woman sat having lunch with her elderly mother. They were animatedly talking about something, laughing. The daughter gently adjusted her mother's scarf, listening with genuine interest. It was an ordinary scene that would not have stirred any particular emotions in me before, but now I looked at them with a pang of longing. Why had things gone wrong between Layla and me? When had we lost the closeness that should exist between mother and daughter? Perhaps I had been a bad mother, not paying enough attention to my children, demanding too much or, conversely, too little. No, I had always tried to be a good mother. Otto and I worked hard to give the children everything they needed. I read books to them, helped them with homework, and supported their hobbies. Sure, I made mistakes. All parents do, but I never betrayed my children, never lied to them, never exploited them. Layla betrayed me, used me, lied to me, and she didn't even think it was wrong, judging by her reaction. Maybe it wasn't my fault. Maybe it was hers, her character, her decisions, her sense of morality. And as much as it pained me to admit it, I couldn't be held responsible for her choices. When I got home, I found 3 messages from Layla on my answering machine. The first demanded that I call her back immediately. In the second, she threatened serious consequences if I didn't stop this lawyer nonsense. In the third, her tone changed to pleading. Mom, please talk. I'll explain everything. Don't do this, please. I didn't call back. What else could she say? What excuses could she give? I took out a loan in your name because I wanted a better house.
I forget your signature because I kne jud seino.
I hid everything from you because I didn't think it was necessary to inform you. No explanation could change what had happened. My daughter had abused my trust, broken the law, and jeopardized my financial security. And the worst part was that she didn't even see the harm in it. I went to bed early but couldn't sleep for a long time, replaying the events of the last few days in my head. All the evidence indicated that Layla had acted deliberately and calculatingly. She had not only used my name, she had developed a scheme to cover her tracks. She had registered the house with a shell company. She had used her bank contacts to bypass controls. It wasn't an impulsive mistake. It was a carefully planned fraud. And Merton knew about it. He may not have been directly involved, but he knew and approved of his sister's actions. His reaction to my call left no doubt.
My own children conspired against me.
They didn't see me as a person with feelings and rights, but as what? An obstacle, an inconvenience, a means to an end. How could I not have seen it before? How could I not have seen that my children's attitude toward me had long since crossed the line of mere respect? All my life I tried to be a good mother, to support them, to help them, to make concessions, and as a result, they decided that they could use me however they wanted. Well, it's time to show them they were wrong. I am not a helpless old woman who can be manipulated. I am a person who knows how to stand up for herself. I am a mother who loved her children, but will not let them trample on my dignity. Yes, I'm hurting. Yes, I feel betrayed. But this pain doesn't break me. On the contrary, it gives me strength. Strength to fight for justice. Strength to show my children that their actions have consequences. Strength to finally respect myself. I called Eleanor this morning and told her I was ready to file the lawsuit as soon as possible. It was time to act decisively. 2 weeks had passed since the lawsuit was filed. Eleanor warned me that Layla would receive official notification of the lawsuit in the next few days. After that, we could expect a new wave of calls and attempts to influence me. So I tried to mentally prepare myself for the impending storm. Contrary to expectations, however, the phone remained silent. Neither Layla nor Merton tried to contact me. I even started to worry. Perhaps something had happened to the children, but then I decided that they were simply ignoring me in the hope that I would come to my senses and withdraw the lawsuit. Thursday morning, Carol called. She spoke quickly and excitedly.
Lila, are you sitting down?
You'd better be sitting. What's wrong? I asked, sinking into the chair next to the phone. My granddaughter Lucy, you remember her, right? She works part-time for Silver Spoon Catering Company, Carol began. So, she just called me and told me that her company got the contract to cater Layla's party. The housewarming party is on Saturday on Lakeshore Terrace.
I was silent, processing the information.
Layla was hosting a housewarming party in a house that had been bought with a loan fraudulently taken out in my name. And of course, she hadn't invited me. Lila, are you there? Carol's voice brought me back to reality. Yes, I'm here, I replied. I'm just thinking about what I heard. That's simply outrageous. Carol exclaimed. To throw a housewarming party while a lawsuit is pending, and not even invite your own mother. I always said your Layla was a handful, but this goes too far. How many guests is she expecting? I asked, surprised by my own calmness. Lucy says the reservation is for 40 people.
Cocktails, appetizers, champagne, all top-notch.
The party starts at 6 p.m. I imagined Layla leading guests through her luxurious new home, receiving congratulations, talking about the designer renovations and the lake view, and not a word about how she had managed to buy the property. Thank you for informing me, Carol, I said. This is important information. What are you going to do? Her voice sounded curious. I don't know yet, I said honestly, but I'm sure I'll think of something. After talking to Carol, I dialed Eleanor's number. Fortunately, she was there and answered immediately. Mrs. Stone, I was just about to call you, she said.
The process server can't serve your Daukata the summons.
She doesn't open the door and doesn't answer the phone. I think I know when and where I can definitely find her, I said, and told her about the upcoming party. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Are you suggesting we serve her a summons directly at the housewarming party? Eleanor asked. That's unconventional. Are there any legal obstacles? I asked. No, legally there are no obstacles, Eleanor retorted. The process server has the right to serve documents wherever the defendant is, but it could cause a scandal. Let it, I said firmly. My daughter is having a party in a house she bought with illegally obtained money, and she doesn't even invite me, even though the loan is in my name. I think a small scandal is the least she deserves. All right, I'll contact the process server, Eleanor agreed after a brief thought. But are you sure you personally want to be there? Wouldn't it be better to let the process server do the work himself? I considered, really? Why would I want to be there, to see the shock on my daughter's face, to savor her humiliation? No, that wasn't it. I wanted Layla to realize that I was not a helpless old woman who could be used and forgotten. I am a person who can stand up for herself. Yes, I want to be there, I said firmly. Not out of revenge, but to show my daughter that I haven't given up, and I won't.
I understand.
Eleanor's voice was respectful. In that case, I'll arrange with the process server to meet you near your daughter's house on Saturday evening. Let's say 5:30 p.m. That's good, I agreed. Let me know the exact location closer to the date. After talking to Eleanor, I felt strangely calm. The decision had been made, and now I just had to follow the plan. For the first time in a long time, I felt I had the situation under control, instead of just drifting. The rest of the week passed in anxious anticipation. I tried to busy myself with everyday tasks, cleaning, reading, working in the garden, but my thoughts kept returning to Saturday. Am I doing the right thing?
Is it too cruel to ruin my daughter's celebration?
But every time doubts began to gnaw at me, I remembered what Layla had done, and my resolve returned. Saturday, I woke up early. The day was clear and warm, perfect weather for a lake party. I stood in front of my closet for a long time, wondering what to wear. In the end, I chose a dark blue dress with a white collar, strict but elegant. I styled my hair and applied light makeup. When I looked in the mirror, I saw not a woman broken by grief, but a person with dignity and steadfastness. At 5 p.m., I called a taxi. Usually, I used public transport, but today was a special occasion. Besides, I didn't know how I would get home afterward, and I didn't want to depend on bus schedules. Eleanor had sent me the address of a cafe near Lakeshore Terrace, where we were to meet the process server. As the taxi pulled up to the cafe, I saw Eleanor sitting at a table on the outdoor patio. Next to her sat a tall, middle-aged man in an elegant suit.
Mrs. Stone.
Eleanor stood up when she saw me. I'd like to introduce you to Mr. David Miller, the process server. Mr. Miller nodded politely.
Good evening, madame.
Dr. Vance has explained the situation. I will serve Mrs. Coldwell with the lawsuit according to all rules. Thank you. I shook his hand, noting his firm grip. Here's the plan of action, Eleanor said. Mr. Miller will pose as a catering staff member to get into the house. Once he's found your daughter, he'll present her with the papers. You can go in with him or wait outside and come in later, whatever is more convenient for you. I considered whether I should show up with the process server or wait until the documents were served and then go in, which would make a stronger impression. I think it would be better if I went in with Mr. Miller, I decided. Layla should know immediately that this isn't a coincidence or a stroke of fate. Whatever you say, Eleanor nodded. Just remember, your goal is not to cause a scandal, but to show that you are serious and will not back down. Try to maintain your dignity, no matter what. I'll try, I promised, though I was trembling inside. We decided to walk. It was only a 10-minute walk from the cafe to Layla's house. On the way, Eleanor explained the legal aspects of the situation to me again. Once service is complete, your daughter is officially considered informed of the lawsuit. She has 21 days to file a response with the court. If she fails to do so, the court can enter a default judgment in your favor. I nodded, but my thoughts were far away. I imagined entering a house where I had never been welcome. I would see my daughter's face when she realized her schemes had been exposed. What would she say? How would she react? And how would I feel about it? Lakeshore Terrace was just as I had imagined. A row of luxury villas by the lake, with manicured lawns and expensive cars in the driveway. Number 17 stood out even against this backdrop, a two-story house with panoramic windows and a large lakeview terrace. Several cars were already in front of the house, and muffled music and laughter drifted from the open windows. "The party's in full swing," Mr. Miller said, adjusting his tie. "Perfect timing." We walked to the front door. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, but I tried to stay calm.
Mr. Miller pressed the doorbell.
A few seconds later, the door was opened by a young woman in a catering uniform. "Are you from Silver Spoon?" she asked. We were expecting additional staff. "That's right." Mr. Miller nodded confidently. "I was sent to help with the service, and this lady is the quality inspector. We need to speak with the hostess." "Certainly. Come in." The girl led us inside. Mrs. Coldwell is in the living room with her guests. We entered a spacious hallway with marble floors and mirrored walls. Vases of flowers were everywhere, and from the ceiling hung a crystal chandelier that must have cost a fortune. I held my breath. This was what the money from the loan in my name had been used for. Mr. Miller confidently strode toward where the voices came from. I followed him, trying not to betray my agitation. We entered a huge living room with panoramic windows overlooking the lake. The room was filled with people in evening attire, champagne glasses in hand. In the middle of the group, Layla stood in an elegant beige dress, animatedly chatting about something. When she saw an unknown man in a suit, she paused halfway. When she saw me, her face froze in shock. "Mom," she said incredulously. "How did you get here?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on me and Mr. Miller. He stepped forward. "Mrs. Layla Coldwell?" he asked in an official tone. "Yes," my daughter replied, confused. "And who are you?" "I am David Miller, the process server." He pulled some papers from his inside pocket. "I hereby serve you with the complaint from Lila Stone for fraud and forgery." Layla's face turned pale. She stood motionless, staring at the papers held out to her.
"What the hell is this?" cried Wilbur, Lila's husband, stepping forward.
"What kind of lawsuit?" "The lawsuit concerns a mortgage loan of $950,000 illegally taken out in Mrs. Stone's name," Mr. Miller explained calmly. "Mrs. Coldwell, please accept the papers." Layla mechanically took the papers, still staring at me in shock. "Mom, have you gone crazy?" she hissed. "Are you making such a scene in front of everyone?" "No, Layla, you're crazy," I said softly but firmly. "Taking out a loan in my name without my knowledge.
Forging my signature.
Buying a house with money that isn't yours." The room grew so quiet you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. The guests looked around confused. Someone started to move toward the exit. "Mrs. Stone," Mr. Miller leaned slightly toward me. "My mission is accomplished. I can leave. Unless you have further instructions." "Thank you, Mr. Miller." I nodded.
"You may go."
The process server bowed politely and walked to the exit. There was an uncomfortable silence in the living room. Layla stood there, clutching the received documents, seemingly unsure what to do next.
"Let's keep the party going, folks."
Wilbur tried to lighten the mood. "Miss," he said to the catering girl, "bring more champagne, while my mother-in-law and I talk in the study." He took a step toward me to take my arm, but I recoiled. "No, Wilbur," I said. "No talking in the study. Everything I have to say, I've already said in court. Now I want to see the house that I bought with the loan money in my name. I have the right to, don't I?" "Mom, stop it right now." Layla had finally found her voice again. "You're embarrassing us in front of everyone." "No, Layla, you're embarrassing yourself by your actions," I said calmly. "I'm just speaking the truth."
"What truth?"
Merton, whom I hadn't noticed among the guests, interjected. "What are you making up again, Mother?"
"I'm not making anything up, Merton."
I turned to my son. "Your sister took out the loan in my name by forging my signature, and you knew about it, but you did nothing to stop her." That's not true," Merton mumbled. But I could see in his eyes that I had hit the nail on the head. "Enough." Layla threw the papers onto the coffee table. Mom, you're leaving right now, or I'll call the police. Call them, I said calmly. It'll be interesting to explain to the officers why you're throwing out the person in whose name the loan for the purchase is. There was a surprised whisper among the guests. Some even whistled softly. Layla looked as if she had been slapped. Ladies and gentlemen, I turned to the guests, many of whom were already uncomfortable. I apologize for the scene. I didn't mean to ruin your evening, but I thought you should know that this beautiful house was bought with fraudulent money. My daughter used my identification and forged my signature to obtain a loan of $950,000. And then she registered the house with a shell company to cover her tracks. That's a lie.
Layla cried.
Mom, you agreed to help us with the loan. You gave me power of attorney. Did I? I raised an eyebrow. Where is this power of attorney? Why didn't you show it to the bank? Why did you have to forge my signature? And why did I only learn about the loan when I received the letter about the overdue payment? Layla was silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Wilbur placed a hand on her shoulder, as if to support her. Mom, let's not make a scene, he said conciliatory. We can discuss this calmly tomorrow, for instance. No, Wilbur, I shook my head. We already tried to discuss things. Layla ignored my calls. Merton urged me not to do anything stupid. Neither of you took the situation seriously. You thought I would just accept it, as I always do, but not this time. I paused, pacing the living room. Luxurious furniture, designer lamps, paintings in expensive frames. Everything screamed money. Money acquired through fraud. It's a beautiful house, I said. Too bad we'll have to sell it soon to pay off the loan. Or the bank will seize it. I haven't decided which option I prefer.
You can't do that.
Layla exclaimed, taking a step toward me. This is our home. We've worked our whole lives to afford a house like this.
No, Layla, I countered.
You didn't work for this. You just stole money by using my name, and now you're going to be held accountable for it. At that moment, my granddaughter, Nora, ran into the living room. She stopped, seeing the tense scene. What's going on? She asked, looking from her mother to me. Grandma, why are you here?
Hello, Nora. I smiled at her.
I came to see your new house.
It's beautiful. Nora, go to your room.
Layla said sharply.
Now.
Mom, now. Layla repeated, raising her voice. Nora gave me a confused look and reluctantly left the room.
Se wat you vedone.
Layla turned to me. You've traumatized the child with your stupid accusations. No, Layla, I said calmly. You traumatized your daughter by setting an example of dishonesty and disrespect for the law. What will she think when she learns the truth about how you got this house? She'll never know, Layla gritted her teeth, because there is no truth. It's just the fiction of a senile old woman who's envious of her own children's success. I felt anger rising within me, but I held it back. This was not the time or place for emotional outbursts. Fiction. I shook my head. I have evidence, Layla. Handwriting analysis proving the signature was forged. Medical records proving my alibi for the time of signing the contract. Property records showing the house was registered to a shell company called Coldwell Holdings LLC. Information about loan payments made from the corporate account. And the testimony of Kevin Reynolds, a loan officer who admitted to helping you bypass controls because of your prior relationship. With each word I spoke, Layla's face grew paler and paler. I saw fear flicker in her eyes for the first time in our entire confrontation. You're bluffing, she whispered. Kevin would never. He's already testified, I lied, hoping Eleanor would forgive me this small deception. When he had the choice to help you or face criminal charges, he chose to save his own skin. Typical men, isn't it? Wilbur now looked at his wife with confusion and distrust. Layla, what is she talking about? Kevin. Nothing, Layla said. She's making it up. Then why are you pale? Wilbur asked. And why did you never tell me the details of how the loan was arranged? I saw a shadow of distrust emerge between the couple. Wilbur may have known generally about his wife's dealings, but the details seemed to have been withheld from him. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the guests again, many of whom were already feeling uncomfortable. Again, I apologize for ruining your evening, but perhaps you should rethink your relationship with the owners of this house. People who can deceive their own mother are likely not honest with friends and colleagues either. Get out. Layla screamed, losing her composure. Get out of my house. Technically, it's not your house yet, I pointed out, and it won't be if the court rules on my lawsuit, but I will go because I've done everything I wanted to do. I turned to leave but stopped when I saw Nora standing in the doorway. She must have overheard our conversation, and her eyes were wide with shock. Grandma, she whispered, is that true? Did Mom take the money without your permission? I looked at my granddaughter, not knowing what to say. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't lie either. Yes, Nora, I said gently. Unfortunately, it's true, but it's not your fault what your parents did. Nora, don't listen to her. Layla exclaimed. Grandma is confused. She doesn't know what she's saying. I understand very well, Layla, I said. And your daughter will soon understand everything too. Children don't stay children forever. They grow up and begin to see their parents for who they really are. With those words, I walked to the exit. No one tried to stop me. I felt the gazes of the guests, surprised, empathetic, judgmental, but I didn't care. I had done what I had to do. The story of the lawsuit and the housewarming scandal spread through Lakeside like wildfire. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, such events cannot go unnoticed. The very next day, Carol called me, excited and out of breath. Lila, you won't believe it. The whole town is talking about it. Lucy said the guests dispersed within half an hour of you leaving, and Wilbur and Layla had a terrible argument in front of everyone. I listened to her story with mixed feelings. On the one hand, there was the satisfaction that the truth had finally come to light. On the other hand, there was the unpleasant aftertaste of the thought that I had been the cause of my own daughter's public humiliation. She might have deserved it, but it's always hard for a mother to see her child suffer, even if that child is an adult woman who committed a crime. What about Merton? I asked. Was he still there until the end? According to Lucy, he left right after you. Looked like he'd seen a ghost. The day after the housewarming scandal, the phone in my house rang non-stop. Neighbors, former colleagues, even people I hadn't spoken to in years called. Everyone wanted details, expressed support, or just gossiped. I answered politely, but briefly, without going into detail. This story was painful enough as it was. I didn't need to turn it into entertainment for the curious. Towards evening, Eleanor called. Mrs. Stone, how are you? I hope yesterday's events didn't upset you too much.
Infine, I retorted.
I'm just tired of the calls. The whole town seems to be talking about our family scandal. Unfortunately, that's unavoidable, Eleanor sighed. But the good news is that after yesterday, your daughter finally received official service of the lawsuit. Now she must either respond in court or settle. Do you think she'll settle? I asked hesitantly. She probably would, especially if she hired a good lawyer. Any lawyer would advise her to avoid a trial, given the amount of evidence against her. Eleanor was right. 3 days later, Layla called me herself. Her voice sounded unusually subdued. Mom, we need to talk. Can I come over? Sure, I said, a little surprised by her tone. Layla arrived an hour later. She looked haggard, with dark circles under her eyes. She was simply dressed, without her usual elegant clothes, jeans, a sweater, minimal makeup. When she entered the house, she paused uncertainly in the hallway, as if she didn't know where to go next. Come to the kitchen, I said. I just made tea. We sat at the table opposite each other. Layla held her cup with both hands, as if warming herself with it. Mom, she began after a pause. I came to talk about the lawsuit. I figured. I nodded. I'm listening. I hired a lawyer, Layla said. He looked at the case file and said that. She stammered. I don't have much of a chance to win. The evidence was too compelling. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. He offered to settle, Layla went on, to avoid a trial and potential criminal prosecution. And what does this settlement entail? I asked. I'll take over the loan, Layla said quickly. I'll have it transferred to my own name. I'll pay all interest and penalties. I'll compensate you for emotional damages, $10,000. In return, you drop the lawsuit and don't file a police report. I thought about it. The proposal was reasonable from a practical point of view, but something about it made me uncomfortable. What about the house? I asked. What would happen to the house on Lakeshore Terrace? Layla pressed her lips together. Wilbur and I decided to sell it after the scandal. After everything that happened, we can't stay there. Besides, we need the money to pay off the loan and compensate you. I see. I nodded. And you? Do you understand what you've done? What do you mean? Layla frowned. I want to know if you realize the seriousness of what you've done, I explained. You didn't just take the money without asking. You forged documents, defrauded the bank, jeopardized my financial security. That's a crime, Layla. I know, she said softly. My lawyer explained all the possible consequences to me. Up to 5 years in prison, a fine of up to $300,000. A criminal record. I'm not talking about the legal consequences, I interrupted. I'm talking about the moral side. Do you realize that you've abused my trust, that you've done to me what a daughter should never do to her mother? Layla was silent, staring into her cup. Why did you do it? I asked. I really want to understand. Wilbur and I dreamed of a house by the lake for a long time, Layla began after a pause. But we didn't have enough money for a down payment. And then I found out that Kevin, an old college friend of mine, worked at Liberty State Bank. He said he could help with the loan, but he needed a co-borrower with good credit. First I thought about asking you, but you decided it would be easier to forge my signature, I finished for her. I knew you'd say no, Layla said with sudden bitterness. You were always so correct, so cautious, always said no to every risky proposal. And I wanted this house. I wanted to show everyone that I had made something of my life, that I wasn't just a poorly paid social services inspector, but a successful woman who could afford Lakeshore Terrace. And for that, you were willing to risk my home, my reputation, my future? I didn't think you'd find out, Layla said softly. We planned to pay the loan on time. No overdue payments. But then Wilbur had some business problems, and we missed a payment.
And the bank sent ML a reminder.
I nodded. That's how I found out. We were silent for a moment. Outside the window, it began to rain. The drops tapped softly, monotonously, and soothingly on the gutter. Well, I said finally, I'll review your settlement offer, but I need to consult with a lawyer. Of course, Layla nodded quickly. I understand, but Mom, please don't take this to court. It would ruin my career.
I'd lose my job.
And Nora, she'd be so embarrassed in front of her friends. I looked at my daughter and saw no remorse. I saw fear. Fear of the consequences, not shame for what she had done. She still didn't realize that the main problem wasn't a threat to her career or reputation, but that she had betrayed her own mother. I'll give you an answer in a few days, I said. I need to think about it. Layla left, leaving behind a sense of incompleteness. I saw no genuine remorse in her, only a desire to avoid trouble. And that made me question the idea of a settlement.
The next day, Merton came.
Unlike his sister, he was aggressive from the start. Mom, this has gone too far. Don't you realize you're destroying our family with your actions? I'm not destroying the family, Merton, I said calmly. That was you and Layla when you decided you could use me for your own purposes. Oh my God, this is so melodramatic, he rolled his eyes. Nobody used you. Layla just wanted a better life for her family. She always wanted a house by the lake. And she decided to get it at my expense, I said. That's called fraud, Merton, and you knew it. But you did nothing to stop your sister. Merton paced nervously around the room. Listen, I didn't know all the details. Okay, Layla told me you had an agreement, that you agreed to help with the loan, and you believed it. I grimaced. After knowing me your whole life, did you really believe I agreed to take out a loan for almost $1 million? I don't know, Merton shrugged. Maybe you finally decided to do something good for your children. His words hit me like a slap in the face. Finally decided to do something useful, as if all the years of care, love, support meant nothing, as if I owed them something in addition to what I had already given them. Get out, I said softly.
Now. Mom, don't be so dramatic.
Merton tried to take my hand. I just want you to drop the lawsuit. Layla is already being punished.
Everyone is talking.
Wilbur is on the verge of divorce. The house has to be sold. Get out, I said again. I'm not discussing this with you, especially after what you just said. Merton wanted to object, but something in my face stopped him. He sighed and walked to the door. You'll regret this, Mom, when you're all alone. After he left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, looking out the window thinking, maybe Merton was right. Maybe I'm too harsh on Layla. After all, she's my daughter, whatever her faults. But then I remembered her face when she talked about the possible consequences for her career. No word about how her actions affected me. No hint of understanding that she had done something irretrievably wrong to her own mother. I called Eleanor and told her about Layla's offer. Legally, it's a reasonable offer, the lawyer said. You'll be compensated and freed from your loan obligations, but of course, the decision is yours. What happens if we proceed with the lawsuit? I asked. Given the evidence, the court will almost certainly rule in your favor, Eleanor retorted. The bank will be forced to annul the loan agreement as fraudulent. And then there are two options. Either the bank goes to the police to report fraud, or it tries to recover the money from your daughter in a civil case. And the house would most likely be seized to pay off the loan, as it serves as collateral for the loan. I thought about it. Strangely, the prospect of losing the house worried me the least. After all, it wasn't my house. I hadn't been in it once before that evening. More important was the question, what would Layla learn if I simply agreed to a settlement? I need to think about it, I said to Eleanor. I'll let you know what I decide. That night, I received another call from Carol. Lila, have you heard the latest news?
Wilbur left Layla.
They say he was furious when he found out about the loan. It turns out she hadn't told him everything either. I sighed, not that I had any particular sympathy for Wilbur, but breaking up a family couldn't make me happy, especially since he and Layla had a daughter. What about Nora? I asked. Is she still living with her mother? No, but they said Wilbur would seek joint custody. The problems multiplied like a snowball. I didn't want my granddaughter to suffer from this story. But was it my fault what had happened? Hadn't Layla's actions triggered this chain of events? I stayed awake all night, thinking about the situation. In the morning, I decided not to settle. The court should hear the case and make a fair judgment. Only then would Layla truly realize the seriousness of what she had done. The trial began a month later. Layla hired an expensive lawyer from the capital who built a defense on the fact that I had allegedly verbally consented to the loan. But when Eleanor presented evidence, handwriting analyses, medical documents proving my alibi, testimonies from bank employees, it became clear that the defense had no chance. The judge, an older woman with a keen gaze, listened attentively to both sides. At the end of the second session she said, "The evidence clearly shows that Mrs. Caldwell acted without her mother's consent and forged her signature on loan documents. Such actions fall under the definition of fraud and forgery. However, given the family relationship between the plaintiff and the defendant, I suggest that the parties reconsider the possibility of a settlement. This court is adjourned for 1 week." During the recess, Layla approached me in the courthouse hallway. She looked exhausted and depressed. "Mom, please let's get this over with. You see what's coming next. I could lose everything. My job, my reputation, maybe even my freedom. Think of Nora. How would it be for her to live with the stigma of being a criminal's daughter?" I looked at her and saw not a contrite daughter, but a person trying to evade responsibility for her actions until the last possible moment. Even now, she only thought of herself, using Nora as leverage. You should have thought of Nora before you committed the crime, I said softly, and about the example you're setting for your daughter with your actions. Is that what this is about? Layla sneered bitterly. Are you trying to teach me a lesson? To prove that Mom is always right, to get revenge for all the years I didn't obey you?
No, Layla, I shook my head.
I just want justice, and I want you to finally realize that your actions have consequences, not just for you, but for other people. Layla looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and anger.
You know what?
Do what you want, but after this, I no longer consider you my mother, and you can forget about having a granddaughter. She turned and walked away, leaving me with a heavy heart in the empty hallway. Her words hurt deeply, but they did not shake my resolve. If that was the price of justice, I was willing to pay it. A week later, the court ruled in my favor. The loan agreement was declared null and void, and the bank was ordered to annul all my obligations arising from it. Layla had to pay me $25,000 in compensation for emotional damages. The judge also noted that the bank had the right to contact law enforcement regarding the fraud, but this decision was left to the financial institution. After the verdict was announced, Layla walked past me wordlessly, without looking in my direction. Merton, who was sitting in the courtroom, also defiantly turned away. I was alone, except for Eleanor and Carol, who had supported me throughout the process. You won, Mrs. Stone, Eleanor said, shaking my hand. Justice has been served. Yes, I nodded. But at what price? Sometimes the truth has a price, Eleanor said philosophically. The question is whether it's worth the price. I didn't answer. I didn't know the answer to that question at that moment. The consequences of the lawsuit were not long in coming. The bank did not go to the police, preferring to settle the matter amicably. They seized the house on Lakeshore Terrace to pay off the loan. Layla and Nora had to move into a small apartment in another part of town. Wilbur filed for divorce and sought joint custody of their daughter. Merton stopped returning my calls. His wife Mavis, with whom I always had a cool relationship, called one day to tell me that they didn't want me to have contact with their children. They're too impressionable for family dramas, she said. I found myself isolated. The children and grandchildren, who were already less eager to associate with me, had now completely broken off relations. I became a pariah in my own family. Strangely, I didn't feel as bitter as I had expected. Was I in pain? Of course. I lost my children and grandchildren, perhaps forever, but at the same time, I gained something equally important: self-respect and freedom from the toxic relationships that had been eating away at my soul for years. Carol became my greatest support during this time. She came over almost every day, brought freshly baked goods, told me the town news, was simply there for me. It was she who suggested I start a new chapter in my life. Lila, how many years have you lived for others? She asked me one day over a cup of tea. First for your husband, then for your children. And when was the last time you did something just for yourself? Something you dreamed of, but put off for later. I thought, when really? Perhaps before I had children, or even before marriage. See? Carol exclaimed, noticing my confusion. It's time to change that. You're free. You have a small savings, plus the compensation from the court. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you want to learn? I don't know, I was confused. It's been so long since I thought about my own desires. Then let's start small, Carol said firmly. I signed us up for computer classes at the community center. Twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. It starts next Tuesday. Computer skills? I was surprised. Why? Because the world doesn't stand still, and neither should we, Carol smiled. Besides, it'll be fun. Imagine us laughing at each other's clumsy attempts to master these modern things. I agreed, albeit with some hesitation. I thought it was too late at my age to learn new things, but Carol was persistent, and she was right. The course turned out to be exactly what I needed, not so much because of the knowledge I acquired, although I learned a lot, but because of the atmosphere. There were people my age with similar problems and interests. People who didn't see me as a burden or a source of potential inheritance. People with whom I could interact as equals. About a month after the course began, I received a call from Eleanor. Mrs. Stone, I have news for you. Liberty State Bank is offering you an additional $10,000 for emotional damages. They've admitted that their employee, Kevin Reynolds, violated their vetting procedures when issuing the loan, and they want to avoid further proceedings. Well, that's fair enough, I said. If the bank had been more vigilant, none of this would have happened. Quite right, Eleanor agreed. I'll prepare all the necessary documents. How are you, by the way? Surprisingly well, I said honestly. Of course, I miss spending time with my grandchildren, but otherwise, I feel freer than I have in years. I'm glad to hear that. Eleanor sounded genuinely pleased. You know, I've seen many cases like this, and often people, even if they win in court, feel like losers because of a broken relationship. But you seem to have found something positive in this situation. Yes, I think so, I agreed. I've realized that I can live for myself, not just for my children, and that my worth as a person doesn't depend on their attitude toward me. After receiving additional compensation from the bank, for the first time in my life, I was the owner of a fairly large sum of money that I could dispose of as I saw fit. Previously, all my savings had either been spent on my family's needs or saved for a rainy day. Now I could afford something I had long dreamed of but never dared to pursue. You should take a trip, Carol urged me. Remember when you always wanted to see Italy? That was a long time ago. I smiled, even before the children were born. Otto had promised we'd go for our silver anniversary, but then my health problems began, and I didn't have time to travel. So, make up for lost time, Carol winked. Imagine Venice, gondolas, narrow streets, cafes in St. Mark's Square. Would you come with me? I asked suddenly. Carol froze, cup to her lips. But I thought you wanted to go alone. Why would I want to go alone? I shook my head. It would be more fun with two people. Besides, you've always been braver than me. If I get confused, you'll know exactly what to do. Carol smiled. You know, I've never been to Europe. I always wanted to. But I always had children, grandchildren, and obligations. Yes, Lila, I'll come. Good, I said. Let's plan something wonderful.